Hey, I'm back. This is Chandler for Melda Production. In previous videos, I showed you how to create a low gain amp or medium gain amp or high gain amp, and hopefully those were useful and you had an idea how to do it. But in this video, I'll show you a few tips and tricks, as well as some things I did with some of the newer amps that have appeared in MTurboamp. And these, I think, will give you a lot more range, more dynamics, etc. So let's get into it. First, I have this M cabinet here, just using this as a speaker simulator. And I'm going to use that. I probably won't change it. So as I said, this isn't really a best tones video. I just want to show you how to do these things in here. More technical, I guess. But of course, I will play a little bit. So the first thing we have here is Ceres. I designed this to be a low gain American style amp. I'll let you hear it. So what I did with this one and the next one I'm going to show is I wanted to make this very dynamic, and if we look inside here, close some of these gain stages here so it's a little bit smaller. But I'm actually not trying to use a lot of gain, so I'm using a soft mode here, and soft mode like just soft 2, soft 2, soft 2. I think I did that for almost all of them. So instead of using the harder clip modes like clip 1, 2, 3, I'm using these, which will give us a softer style of distortion. But more importantly, I'm not pushing the gain too hard. So here it's a plus 10, plus 10. This is plus nothing. These are plus nothing. I'm using a lot of stages, but I'm not using very much distortion or clipping on them. So that will let me retain a cleaner sound. However, once I push it past a certain point, it will distort. So let me see if I can hit it harder. Yeah, it's a little bit too clean. I don't have strong enough pickups. Let me turn this down a little bit. And let's just turn this down, turn the gain up. So you can hear it get dirty there. But if I do it a little bit lighter, and depending on your pick attack and your volume controls, you can really adjust that. So let me turn this up. This can actually get fairly gainy. So as you can hear, that can really get dynamic. It can get really gainy or it can get really clean. And you can adjust that yourself with your guitar. Another thing I'll show with this has this bright switch here. Let me turn this down a little bit. You can hear this does get into fairly gainy territory. But you hear the flubby low end by hitting the bright switch here. So you can hear there's a big difference. And this is really easy to implement if you want to make a design like this. We'll just go in here and look again. If you see the bright switch, just look right here. When it's off, it has a low cut 12 decibels per octave at 40 hertz, but look how far I have the Q factor set down. I have it at 0.25. Then when I press it, it goes up to 77. So you can hear that's a big difference. So if you want to implement that in your designs, that's how you do it. You just see it right there. So that's all it is. Now, the other thing I'll kind of show you here is another one that's very similar. This one is almost the same. I did it the exact same way with the controls and the gain stages. The only difference is this one is higher gain. So this is more British voiced and has more gain on it. So I can do the same thing. not great playing, but I think you get the idea how it can go from, really distorted to clean. And this one, instead of a bright switch, I have a lead boost. So this is with it off. Like medium gain. And so this is just boosting the gain up a bit. I'll show you exactly how I did that. In here, I have the lead boost. If you look at the input EQ, I'm not doing anything in the distortion section, actually. All I'm doing when I press this is it's going to increase the output of this input EQ, and it's going to put some high pass and low pass filters on like this. And this is because when you get more distorted, sometimes it gets too much high end, and this smooths it out a little bit, which I think sounds better for a lead, and it cuts out some of the low end so it doesn't get flubby on the low strings. So that's all I'm doing there. So if you want to add like a lead boost, this is a way to do it. You can just increase the output EQ, but if you think, it sounds flubby with that much gain, just put the high pass filter and low pass filter on there, and that'll do the trick. The next one I want to show you is this. I showed you this in the high gain guitars one. And this is one I really like. This one does almost the same thing, except instead of a boost, it does something a little bit different. Let me turn this off and play this clip I have here. I played that before, right? Now let's do the same thing on sickle mode. So this one, sickle mode, has much less gain. And you're wondering like how you do this and make different channels for amps. I'll show you exactly how to do it. So to make a different channel, we can look here and we see the sword and sickle channel. We just move this down, watch stage 4. It drops out. I'll move it here so you can see it. So I'm just dropping a gain stage to do this. And this is a good way to make different channels. Another thing you might do is you're like, I should add another gain stage. It doesn't sound right. I don't like it. And another thing I did here is you see the different channels. If you look here at number 2, this peak filter, it changes. So in sword, it's at 0 decibels, and the sickle setting, it's at -9. So these are other things. Changing some of the EQ for the different channels and the previous gain stages also helps. But I think just turning them on and off can really help you if you want to make a multi-channel amp. So that's something I did. And another thing I did was the tightness control. This one I did by just using the input, a high pass filter. Like this, if I move it up, it goes to 400. At the default, it's at 210. This is a 6 decibel per octave high pass filter. And if I move it down, it goes to 85. And so this will depend on your guitar, if you have any pedals in front of it, and just the sound you're going for. If you want something really tight, I would leave it at 0 or maybe even push it up to 100. If you have like a flabby guitar, maybe you have a 8-string guitar or something. But if you're like, you know what, I want an exposed part, I need that extra low end, and I'm not using a ton of gain, you might move it down to -100. So it depends on you, but I really like these types of switches because I don't need to use another pedal in front of it unless I really want to. The next part is one I created called Bradford Chap. This was my tribute to Holdsworth. And so this one has 2 channels. I did the same way as before with increasing or decreasing the amount of gain stages. It has a clean channel like this. Perfectly clean. And then it has a lead stage like this. Now, this isn't a great tone so far. To get that Holdsworth tone, you really need to do some other things, but this is just an idea of what it can do. The clean is very clean, and this has 4 different EQs. You might be wondering, is this based on like one of Alan's old digital amps? But it's actually not. Like, I don't know what the parameters are for this. So I just kind of did this by ear, what sounds good to me. And so that's how I did that. I think this gives you more options and things. But on top of that, I have the lead channel. As I said, I did everything like that before. This also has a tight control. But more importantly, it has a lead smoothing. So if I move this all the way down here, I'll play a chord. Sounds like that. But if I move it up here, That's a bit muffled. I probably wouldn't use it there. I have it at default, negative 50%. And the reason I have this is because Holsworth's lead sound, oftentimes he would take the amp and he wouldn't adjust any of the tone controls. He would just move down the tone control on his own guitar. And that's fine, but sometimes you're like, you know what, I don't want to have to switch and do things on my guitar all the time. Now, whenever you switch to the lead channel, it's like it already turns down your tone control for you. And of course, you can adjust this however you want, but it's there for you. And if you think maybe sometimes this is a little bit too bassy, you can adjust the bass and low mids to get exactly what you want. And I wanted to get a good amount of gain on this, but you can also turn it down. So it has a lot of sustain for leads, but if you want to turn it down, so that might be nice for something like Modern Fusion or something where you want, I want a little bit of dirt on there, but not too much, and I want something smooth. So it's good for that. Last but not least, let's look at this amp called Junko. This amp is a really nice, clean amp. It doesn't really do any kind of distortion, but it does have 4 bands of EQ, and this one has 3 different settings. Jazz, which is a really fat jazz sound. So if you're like me and you don't have like a big jazz box, this will already make it kind of dark for you. And of course you can adjust it. You're like, that's a little bit too dark. Just turn down the low mids or the bass and turn up the treble. But it's there for you. I think this is nice because you can just plug right into it and it gets you that jazz sound. The funk here, let me change pickups. So this one is much brighter. So let me do jazz with that pickup. Funk. So if you want something with, a little bit less low mids, more highs, etc., I think this is good. So I think that's nice. And pop is even more scooped and with less low end. So let's gear funk. Pop. So my thinking behind this was I wanted to create something that was, of course, clean, but something that kind of emulated some like old, like solid state jazz amps and that sound that you'd get by plugging directly into the console with no amp, which was used for like lots of funk sounds in the probably 70s and 80s. And also, I think maybe even now they use this for some pop music too. They don't even use an amp and they just EQ it from there. And these, since it has more powerful EQ controls, you can do that here. If you don't want to use M cabinet or an impulse response, it has some, I guess, EQing here, which will kind of do the trick for you if you want. But let's look inside. I'll show you exactly how I did this. You're probably thinking, like, how did you do all this? So here is the jazz setting. I just use the input EQ for this, and you can see these are setting the values for the bass, low mids, high mids, and treble there. So you hear this, hear the jazz, funk, and if you look like, let's see, I'll do the low mids. This is the maximum, like all the way up for the funk setting, but let's look at it, the jazz setting there. So you can see like, okay, there's a big difference between that. And you see like the high cut. And let's look at it at the pop setting. So you can see the pop setting, the upper mids are actually even changing frequencies. So you can see how you can get lots of different sounds. And you think like, oh, maybe if you just adjust them, you can get the jazz to sound like the pop, but actually you can't do that. And so the way I did this was, if you go in here, you see I use lots of multi-parameters to adjust the max values. Let's say parameter 3, max value 1. You're like, what is that? But if you look at parameter 3, max value 1 here. So I'm just adjusting that. So in some one it will be +4, another setting it might be +6, or it might be -3, etc. So by doing that and setting them, you can get all sorts of different voicings with this. You may not want to go as crazy as I went here with this Junko amp, but if you thought like, I have an amp, I want the distortion channel to sound more British and I want the clean channel to sound more American, you can do this exact same thing and get those types of sounds out of it. So hopefully I gave you a good overview of things you can do, and if you're interested in these amps, check them out in MTurboamp. They're there. I don't know if I'm going to be making any more. Maybe, I don't know. Is this enough? Let me know down below. Have I made enough, or should I try to make some more? So if you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. Leave me any questions or comments down below, and check out all the other plugins at meldaproduction.com. Till next time, see you.